A con artist frames me for crashing into their car. But then I have a con of my own. As a bit of background, this was back in the 1990s. I'd recently been medically retired from the military and was attending college in Texas. My wife was working in her chosen field while I did my level best to decide what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. Anyway, one day I left campus, going around the backside to avoid the traffic. I was heading over to pick my wife up for lunch and ended up sitting behind another car at a stop sign. The car in front of me was a brand new Chevy. One of their little gorgeous models, the actual trade name escapes me at the moment. It was in candy apple red and being driven by a fairly new blonde, also a little gorgeous model, whose name will also slip by unuttered. I sat, an old sailor in an old pickup, just listening to the radio and thinking about lunch, when the Chevy drove into the intersection and then stopped. I didn't think anything of it, so I hadn't done any more than put my hand on the gear shift in preparation of pulling up, when suddenly, with a suitable squeal of tire, the Chevy shot back at me. I slapped the shift into reverse, but it was too late. The little Chevy smashed into the front of my truck doing around 25 to 30 miles per hour. After a second, I cut my engine, got out of the cab, and walked around to the front of my truck. The good news was that I could see that I wasn't going to have to worry about that loose belt squeal anymore. The bad news is that the front of my little pickup was pretty much totaled. Grille drove back into radiator, water all over the pavement, headlights smashed. I bent down and noted that there seemed to be oil leaking as well. With a sigh of total incomprehension, I walked further up to the passenger door of the little red Chevy and its blonde driver. I was annoyed, but not enraged. I guess I was still trying to figure out exactly what had happened and why she'd ended up stopping in mid-turn and put it in reverse like that. I looked through the tinted window and she was on the phone talking agitatedly to someone. With all the cell phone silliness I'd seen since leaving the military, seeing her yapping on one really didn't surprise me. Although, had I thought about it, I should have wondered who exactly she was calling. Instead, I tapped on the window and she turned a bland face to me and then screamed into the phone loud enough to penetrate the glass, "Oh my God, he's got a tire iron!" Naturally, I spun around and looked behind me, and then the nickel dropped. I turned in a slow circle and noted there were no businesses, houses, or apartments in view, nor was anyone on the sidewalks or walking down the road. For that matter, the only traffic was several blocks away in any direction. Her little car was sitting at the stop sign, almost exactly where it had been when I pulled in behind her. I stepped back and looked at our vehicles. Yep, it looked for all the world as if I'd rear-ended her. Damn, the little witch had set me up. I quickly walked back to my truck, thinking as fast as I could. Any minute now, a police car was going to show up, called by the little blonde lady, expecting to find a crazy man with a tire iron, and ideally needed to not be that man. I pulled my tire iron out from behind my seat and threw it as far as I could into a nearby field, then jumped into my truck. It was a slim chance, but it was the only one I had. I made sure the truck was in reverse, and then I belted myself in, slammed my face into the steering wheel, opened my door, I was hearing sirens not too far away, and half slumped out into the open door at an uncomfortable angle. I went limp just as the police car screeched to a halt. I ignored the policeman, screaming at me to get out of the truck, trusting that my limp body would not move him to open fire. He finally edged his way over, noticed the bloody nose, tugged at an eyelid. I made sure my eye was well rolled up, and then let me drop back into position. I stayed limp while he checked on the blonde, who was near hysterical with fright over the lunatic with the tire iron. Haha, until she saw me, that is. I'd hoped that her rearview mirror was as off as it looked, or that she'd be too involved with concocting her own story to notice what I was doing. At seeing my body hanging limply below the driver's door of my truck, she stammered to a halt. A second set of sirens had been getting closer, and the policeman told the now silent blonde to stay in her car. A few seconds later, someone cut me out of my seatbelt and laid me on the ground. A competent set of hands checked my vitals, and within a few seconds, a harsh and demanding smell flooded my clotting nose. I fought it for a few seconds and made a pretty good display of a man coming around after having been knocked out. I immediately made to throw myself to the side, and stopped, half being restrained and half staring wildly around to see what had happened. The medic sat back, when I sat up and looked at the front of my truck and moaned, "What the frick did that idiot do to my truck?" He told me to lie back down and started asking me professional questions about where I hurt and could I feel my toes and all that crap. Every few seconds, I'd look back at the wreck and mutter about the idiot backing up like that and what the heck he had been smoking. Little bits of angry stuff. The policeman, having gotten the blonde's statement, walked over and asked if I felt up to talking. I said I felt fine, just a little sore. The medic okayed it and helped me get back up to my feet. I gave the officer my license and proof of insurance and included my retired military ID card, then sat on my front seat as if I'd just noticed it and asked me what had happened to my seatbelt. He explained that I had to be cut out of it and I just shrugged. Just another item for his insurance company to pay for, I guess. What the heck was his story, officer? Why did he back up that way? The policeman looked sharply at me and asked me what I meant. I described exactly what had happened, but concealed the fact that I knew it was a female driving the Chevy and kept referring to her as him. After I got done and had finished writing it all down, he asked if I had any proof. Proof? What do you mean proof? I frowned at him and then I let my jaw drop a bit. Hey, wait a minute. You're not telling me that idiot is saying that I did this, are you? He admitted that the other driver's story was that I'd rear-ended her, not him, and then threatened her with a tire iron. I frowned again and informed him that I didn't have a tire iron, that it was sitting on the garage of my house a couple of hours away. I moved aside as he searched the cab of my truck and caught a lucky break when he noticed, without my having to point it out to him, that my truck was still in reverse. He got out of my cab, frowning, and then asked me to stay where I was and walked up to the Chevy. He then asked the blonde to step out of her car, and when she had done so, leaned into the open driver's side door. After a few seconds, he stood back up and asked the girl to repeat her statement of what happened. It was a marvelously teary bit of acting, but she almost blew it by being somewhat puzzled when he didn't react. Instead, he asked her to go on and describe everything that had happened after the accident and everything she had done then. She backed down from the tire iron story, saying that it might simply have been a reflection on her own window, but insisting that I'd at least beaten on her window and that I'd been simply putting on an act for their benefit. The policeman looked over at the medic, who slowly shook his head. Years of doing search and rescue might not have done much good for me physically, but I sure as heck know what an unconscious man acts like. The policeman then asked her if she had tried to drive away or if she had immediately shut off her engine. She said that the engine had died and no matter what lies I'd said, that she had never tried to leave the scene of an accident. The police nodded once and asked the medic to step over. He then asked the medic to sit in the Chevy and confirm it was in reverse. I love smart people. I didn't even have to suggest that he check. When I last saw the little blonde, she was honestly crying. She was also handcuffed and being driven away, arrested for making a false police report. Some legal mumbo-jumbo about trying to run a con, and my favorite part, assault and battery. Once she had realized that she had blown it, about the same instant she was handcuffed, she started weeping and explaining that she didn't have the money for the payments on the car, and that her only option was to fake an accident. But that I'd been faking too and hadn't been injured. You've got to believe her. She wouldn't lie about that. I signed my name to an almost letter-perfect statement of events over at the police station, being careful to never mention in my own statement about how my nose got banged up, or how I'd ended up unconscious and hanging out of the door. The arresting officer's report, as well as the EMT's, had already noted that it appeared as if I'd been partially ejected by the impact, or might have been trying to get out of the truck at the last moment. I've always believed that one should never sign one's name to a false statement. Wisest in the long run, don't you think? I realized later, however, that the keys were still in the ignition, but I'd turned the engine off after the accident automatically. My whole pretense would have completely fallen apart if the policeman had simply noticed that the engine was turned off. It's wild to think about. Turned out her car insurance was good, however, and they paid for my little pickup's repair. The damage wasn't as bad as it originally looked, thank God. A little front-end work, a new radiator, and assorted other dinged or dented gizmos, a little cosmetic surgery to make her outside look right once more. Heck, the mechanic is even going to toss in a full overhaul, including fixing that damn fan belt. I had to drive a loaner for the next week, also care of the blonde's insurance, and the irony of this will make you laugh. The loaner was a little red Chevy. Nice car, and my wife and I had a ball riding in it, but way too expensive for a guy like me to drive every day. Heck, a car that nice might have made me try something stupid to make the payments. Oh, and dumb as it might seem, yeah, I went back to get the tire iron. I waited until dusk and then took the wife's old beat-up Honda over there. It took me about an hour to find the silly thing, Not because it was particularly well hidden, but because I hit the dirt and flattened every time someone drove by. Paranoia and guilt in equal parts. This is a terrific story. Also, the author was lethally analytical and quick on his feet, even with his wee blunder of the tire iron and the ignition. I have no idea what I would have done to get myself out of this one, and would probably have been got by this selfish woman. Look, if you're in this much financial trouble, surely you can try and sell or downgrade before you go through the trouble of trying to frame an innocent person for tons of money and damages, and get him into trouble for assault into the bargain? I understand that I'm giving out my moral judgments from my computer editing chair, but I don't see any way in which this doesn't come out with her being an absolute scumbag. She had made a conscientious decision that she was going to frame some other person, presumably a person of a lower income bracket than her, judging by the beaten pickup truck he was driving, for her debt. Absolutely unforgivable. She definitely deserved everything she got, and it's a great argument in favor of karma that she ran into the one person more able to run a convincing con than she was. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Woman keys car because it's too loud? So for some background, the car we're talking about isn't mine, it's my brother-in-law's. He's suing the lady in question for about 60 grand for the damages. I don't know the exact car model, but it's a muscle car and it's manual. So, it all started when I decided that I wanted to start learning to drive stick. Since my brother-in-law, Bill, is the only person I know with a manual car, I had him come over and teach me. When the car starts up, it does make a rather loud rev. We made sure to do it in the afternoon so as to not wake people up and try to be considerate. Anyways, it was about the third or fourth day of him teaching me when she first appeared. The Karen came over to us and said, "Nice car. A bit too loud for my taste, but it's still nice." I said, "Oh, thanks. Mind trying to keep it down a bit? My baby doesn't really seem to like it that much." "Yeah, sure. We've been driving in the day so it doesn't wake people up. I didn't know anyone around here had a baby, so I'm sorry about that." "It's not a problem. Just be quieter, okay?" And with that condescending tone and a smile on her face, she walked off, which kind of made me mad because I thought it was a friendly chat. It wouldn't be the first time people have talked to me about Bill's car thinking it's mine. I've grown to accept that people will think whatever, so I play along and just tell Bill about it later. 2 days go by with no sign of her. I wake up, get ready, and wait for Bill to come over so we can start my lesson. I walk outside and lo and behold, she's there. "I thought I told you to keep it down." "I'm sorry, I can't control it. It's just how the car starts, and we're not going to leave it running while we're not in it. That's a waste of gas." "I don't care. Stop being so loud." With that, she was gone. It always annoys me when people complain about cars being loud. A car is a motor vehicle with a combustion engine in it. Of course it's going to make noise. Brother-in-law got to my place and off we went. We came back to my house to eat at lunch. About 2 hours or so later, my sister and mum come over and tell Bill and I to go and look at the car. The entire driver's side was scratched up and even a tire was popped. Only one person came to mind when I saw it. Karen. We, meaning me and Bill, walked down to her house, which was only a few houses down, and knocked on her door. All we hear come from the other side is, "I'm not apologizing." So this led my brother-in-law to say, "Then you'd better have a good case in court, you B-word. That's gonna cost a lot more to fix, and I'm suing you for every fricking cent." "Well, maybe keep it down then, you hick." "Maybe don't go keying cars and popping tires and you won't get sued, you bimbo." This went on for about 20 minutes. We head back, call the police, and get everything ready for what was about to come. As soon as they got there, we started to explain what had happened. How I was learning stick, how the car was, we showed them the damages, and told them what the Karen had said. We were making sure our side was accurate, so we made sure our timeline was correct. After a while, we walked with the police to her house, and it went down about as well as you'd expect. They said, "Excuse me, ma'am, can you come out of there for a minute? This is the police department wanting to speak to you about the car." "I'm not apologizing. I told them to keep it down and they didn't. They deserve it." "Ma'am, what you did is against the law and they're pressing charges. You have 5 minutes to get out here or we'll get a warrant for your arrest and come back." "Nice try, but I'm not stupid. I know my rights, and you're not allowed to enter my home without my consent or a search warrant." That's only partially true. We can't search your home without a warrant. However, if we have a warrant for your arrest, we can legally enter your home and place you into custody." She was stubborn. Again, they went back and forth a bit. After the allotted time set, we went back to my house and the cops left to get a warrant and we waited. Currently, the lawsuit is in order and the trial is in a few days. She's in police custody. I've never found it easier to drive stick shift knowing I won't have to deal with her condescending ways and tones. We won the case. We got the money, the car is being fixed and she's moving. Her choice, not the judge's. We had 2 cops that can confirm she admitted to doing it. We have pictures, and we've been looking around the neighborhood asking if anyone saw her actually do it, and so far, no one has. I mean, Karen, come on. If you're going to pull vandalism as blatantly as this, you need to at least deny. I don't know whether you are insanely honest or just really dumb. Then again, she's probably a future Darwin Awards recipient for lacking the imagination to realize that everyday street sounds, like cars, are going to happen in their neighborhood from time to time. Also, her response to being caught for a crime was, "I warned them I'd commit crimes against them and am therefore not in trouble." I get that being a new parent is hard, but you don't get to vandalize people's property for that. She could potentially have got out of a huge amount of trouble if she had learned from the guy in the first story and just pretended to have been asleep with the TV on when the cops arrived. She's not only to blame for the situation that happened, but also she's to blame for being caught so clearly and unambiguously as the perpetrator. The narrator wonders if the author and his brother decided to step up their vehicular practices after the law got involved, just to rub things in. Alright, I guess I'll leave then. This happened sometime in 2014. But I only recently realized it might count as malicious non-compliance. You all be the judge. When I was in grad school, I got a job at an in-department office that ordered and maintained testing supplies. I started off at the bottom of the ladder, but was willing to learn more. By my second year in the program, I was placed as the, quote, manager, and given a 75-cent raise. Yay! The work wasn't too difficult. I was responsible for taking requests from professors, getting price quotes from the companies, getting the price quotes approved, and placing orders. There were some other duties, but that was the most difficult stuff I've ever really dealt with. Occasionally, I'd have to deal with our ordering department when they messed up an order. I reorganized the office in a more efficient manner and created multiple new systems for dealing with issues. I practically ran that place for several years and it ran well most of the time. During that time, we hired a bunch of new employees. They just wanted an easy job, but my boss wouldn't take my recommendations on who to hire. In my 4th year in the program, I was asked to order some test kits by one of the program heads. The test kits were related, and I found out they could be ordered as a combo kit that would save us space but cost a little more. We were low on space, so I figured it would be worth it. I got the price quote and got it approved by the program head and then the department head. I placed the order. When the kits arrived, the program head was thrilled with the combined kits and thought they were fantastic. Several weeks later, my boss informed me that I shouldn't have ordered the combined kits, that they'd emptied the program's budget, and that the program head would never have approved them if she had known. Luckily for me, I had the emails of me sending her the price quote with both price per unit and total cost of her approving them. My boss was rather stunned that the program head had lied, but insisted that I take the fall for it. Florida law always favors the employer. She told me that I could either take a demotion or quit. I'm pretty sure she thought that I'd take the demotion, but I quit instead. Joke was on her. None of the other employees were willing to do much, and all had refused to be trained on ordering. The joke around the program was that the office I had managed burned down after I left. It was in complete chaos for months as my boss, who had a lot of other responsibilities, had to figure out how to do the ordering and many other things that are done single-handedly. Yet another great example that, while no individual employees should be irreplaceable, a real incompetent workplace can make them as such by putting all the responsibilities on a single pair of shoulders and not training anyone else to do them. Everything that this employee got punished for and everything that went wrong afterwards was management's fault. It's also wild that their boss would rather quietly punish someone who'd done nothing wrong than actually properly assign blame. People not being held properly accountable, or at least being shown that they were at fault, is the reason why such self-assured and incompetent leadership structures get built up in the first place. Ugh, this makes me so annoyed. I don't know if this varies from state to state, but as a final FU, couldn't you have at least refused either option so that they had to fire you, with all the hassle and accountability that's involved? Maybe Florida is rigged so far against the worker to make that unfeasible as well. Who knows? When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to check out some great music, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.